The Buffalo Bills window to develop players is much shorter now because of how good we are. And in this video, we're going to explore all the reasons why I believe Brandon Beane will be trading up in this year's NFL draft. Hey, Bills Mafia, welcome to my channel, Bills News Consolidated. We got to discuss it. I feel it in my gut. Brandon Beane is due for another move, and it makes so much sense to trade up in this year's NFL draft, getting rid of some of these picks. And the reason being is that NFL drafts cost roughly $7 million. So if we can consolidate things, get rid of some draft picks and trade up, we could ultimately save a little bit of money. Plus, you have to consider how good the Buffalo Bills really are. Brandon Beane stated, we need more out of these rookies. We need the rookies to come in and contribute immediately. So drafting players later in the draft, development style players, we all believe and trust in our development. I'm not saying to stop developing players, but we need to take players that already are a little bit developed, that already have a good understanding of the game, and therefore played against top-notch competition in college and also played for some top schools and came from great programs such as Texas, Alabama, Georgia, all these great programs. There's a decent amount of them. But to take a player from a small school late in the round, it just doesn't make sense because we're going to develop them and then ultimately not be able to sign them, and then they get scooped up by another team. The perfect example of that is Isaiah Hodgins. How much time did we spend with Isaiah Hodgins, getting him up to speed in the NFL, making him into a great player, and we couldn't retain him. He couldn't play really special teams, so that was one of the reasons why we got rid of him. But of course, scooped up by the Giants, and looks like he's going to be a starter this upcoming year. The Buffalo Bills need to consider trading up not only to save money, but to bring in players that can contribute and can compete immediately. And really taking a look at it, we could really solidify things and by getting the player that we actually want. And I've discussed it in my previous videos. There are some definitely clear holes on this team that the Bills should consider. Now, trading up also gives us a chance when trading up into the first round. It gives us an ability to utilize that fifth-year option, saving us even more money. So Brandon Beane could very well trade up again, maybe mimic the same year that Josh Allen and Tremaine Edmonds was drafted, selecting both of them in the first round. I'm feeling that Brandon Beane is definitely going to be trading up into the first round and selecting 2 first-round draft picks in the 2023 NFL Draft. Even if that means giving up next year's first-round pick or second-round pick, if there is a player there worthy and that would help our team immediately. A guy like Jawan Jones, right? He could help out. A guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba, both played at Ohio State, both great programs going against top-notch competition. And I think Bills Mafia, we need to consider some things about who we should draft in the first round, position-wise. It always boils down to best player available, like who is available at that spot. And it also boils down to how we as a team utilize these players. Just for an example, the tight end position. Dawson Knox had a 77% snap count last year. Our backup tight end, Quentin Morris, only had a 26% snap count last year. So if we were to draft a tight end in the first round, we would literally be mixed with Dawson Knox. Even Quentin Morris is still on this team. What kind of snap count would he be getting? Also, running back, right? A lot of people are saying Bijan Robinson of Texas, great school, great program going against top-notch competition, makes a lot of sense. A lot of people are going to say, hey, we should trade up for Bijan Robinson, but how would that work with James Cook and also Nyheim Hines, right? Nyheim Hines we're paying a decent chunk of money to for this upcoming year. James Cook is still trying to develop himself as a player in the NFL. But one guy I like the most in this year's draft is a running back, Roquan. He's absolutely huge. Roshan Johnson of Texas. He's a little bit bigger than Bijan Robinson. They played in a share role. We know running back is by committee here in Buffalo. We're not featuring a single back. And Bijan Robinson is likely going to go, I would say, in like the top 10, 15 of this year's NFL draft. He's just one of those athletes. But his teammate, who worked alongside of him, right? Knows how to work in a committee, and he's a lot bigger. He's huge, right? Roshan Johnson has an inch on Bijan Robinson, and he's got about 5 to 10 pounds more. When looking at their 40 times, he only ran a 1/10 of a second slower. So Bijan ran, what was it, a 4.45, and Johnson ran 4.55. So, I mean, a 1/10 of a second slower, but he's an inch taller and already 10 pounds heavier. And I think that extra inch gives him ability to build more on his frame and get even bigger. That was the problem with Zach Moss. Zach Moss was only 5'9", 200 pounds. How much bigger could Zach Moss get? We talked about it. Having that here, it's proof that the Buffalo Bills still wanted a heavier slug-type back by drafting Zach Moss. Now, I think that would definitely be a huge advantage for the Buffalo Bills, bringing in a guy like Roshan Johnson. He actually played quarterback. He can still throw the ball. They used him in the Wildcat at Texas. It just makes so much sense. And think about what Ken Dorsey could do with him, mixing things up. I think it's huge. But Bills, we need to really start consolidating things and trying to find other ways to save money. So whether that's consolidating draft picks, trading up, and actually getting the player that we want, it makes a ton of sense. You know, $7 million this year, $7 million next year. Brandon Beane said that we're going to have a tight cap space, not only this offseason, but next offseason. So why not trade some of these draft picks so we're not spending so much, knowing that these draft picks are going to have a hard time even making this team to compete? You know, and you look at a guy, if we draft someone later in the draft, you know, they could still develop and compete behind that position. But, you know, when you take someone in the first round, you have to make sure that player is at least going to see the field, at least kind of contribute, you know, and Brandon Beane even stated that it starts up front. It starts with the offensive line. It starts with the defensive line. But again, you just have to see how much that player can impact this team. So really, I think right tackle makes a lot of sense at this point. Buffalo Bills could easily trade up into the first round and get our right tackle. If we're not able to re-sign Tremaine Edmonds, we could trade up into the first again and potentially get a guy like Drew Sanders. I think that would be huge. I mean, why not get a right tackle that can compete with Spencer Brown for that right tackle spot? And then Spencer Brown could be that swing tackle. He could play right, he could play left, or whoever we draft could play right and could play left. Just makes so much sense here. I'm really liking that. Other first-round pick, wide receiver, I think JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba can come in, compete with Isaiah McKenzie, Khalil Shakir, Gabe Davis, even in the slot, and just mix and match things. He's definitely going to get playing time. He'll definitely get playing time. But again, tight end, we have Dawson Knox, we have Quentin Morris. There's other guys on this roster too right now that, you know, Brandon Beane definitely made some free agent signings that are going under the radar here. So in my next video, we're going to be dissecting all the free agent signings already made by the Buffalo Bills that no one is really talking about. I mentioned in my previous video, but a guy like Greg Mance, who could play center and guard in both positions, a guy like Jalen Maiden and Anderson, both the safeties there. I think that's huge. Bills Mafia, don't take them lightly. If you guys enjoyed this video, please hit like, subscribe. I'm definitely feeling a trade up in this year's NFL draft. Time to start saving some money somehow, some way, Bills Mafia. Check you guys soon. Go Bills. Peace.